All right, hello everybody, and welcome to a special episode of the JimFear138 podcast. I have today a very special guest who has just become the biggest hit thing in indie publishing because these people don't understand how the Streisand effect works, apparently. So, this is John Arroz. Sorry. Did I get it right?
Got it perfect. John Arroz. I am the author of Star Realms Rescue Run. I love space opera. That's what I intend to be doing for the rest of my life, and I am very happy to be here with you, Jim.
I'm very, very happy to have you. So this is a really you don't mind if I curse, do you? Because that's kind of.
Well, I mean, my kids aren't here right now, but yeah, I mean, if they were around, I'd tell you to knock it off.
Okay, cool. So if they come around, just let me know. And I'll do my best to contain my drunken enthusiasm. So this is just a really crazy situation that came about. When did this happen? Well, hold on. Let's back up. First of all, what went down? Just get everybody on the same page here.
Gosh, so much has gone down these last several months, and I'm sure a lot of normies, as they would be called, have dealt with a lot of the brunt of this as well. Just there's social media has become such a toxic environment of anti-Trump hate, anti-Republican hate, anti-conservative hate, and anti-Christian hate. I think I covered all my bases there. Anti-alt-right hate, whatever you want to call it. It's everywhere. If you are not in the lockstep groupthink at this point, you are guilt by association. You are evil. You are assisting Nazis. They will punch you. They will hit you. They will do whatever they can. And, to some degree, it's always been like that. I wrote on the blog that Vox gave me, which I very much appreciate him doing, about kind of how I've seen this through science fiction culture over the past several years, but it's really just escalated to a point where it's impossible to stay silent without losing your mind.
Yeah, I'm pretty much in the exact same thing. That's why I don't even really try. I just kind of come out here and say whatever happens to come to mind. I don't really see any point in hiding your political opinions or anything like that, just so long as you're not actively demonizing the other side. I'm kind of okay with, I see a line there, but so far as gloating over people being beaten or saying that they should be beaten and that's perfectly morally acceptable, that's my line. So what specifically happened to you that caused this big uproar? For the people who haven't read the blog posts over at what was it, Castalia House, or did Vox actually give you a post on Vox Populi?
He actually gave me a post on Vox Populi, which is crazy in and of itself.
That's amazing.
I want to caveat this with, I don't know the guy. I've emailed him a handful of times. With a couple of my problems, a couple funny John Scalzi things, so that he could repost them. And he gave me this platform, even though I'm really not doing anything for him. I'm buying his books, I guess. But he definitely did not have to do it. It benefits me so much more than it benefits him. Super generous. It's absolutely the antithesis of everything that you would expect Vox Day to be if you hang out in science fiction fandom.
Yeah, I mean, Vox has this reputation, which admittedly he does play into for hilarious effect, but this reputation as the supreme Dark Lord and the Lord Voldemort of science fiction, to use the what do you call it, the chuds, the SJWs, those types of people, their terminology, since they can only apparently think in Harry Potter terms. As the last couple of weeks have shown us. But, really, whenever I see an interview with Vox, he just seems like the nicest guy.
Super nice.
Even his periscopes and things, I've watched a couple of those, and he just seems like a really polite, soft-spoken, intelligent guy who has controversial opinions on shit.
Yeah, definitely. Super nice. He has been very kind in doling out advice both privately and publicly to me. I appreciated yesterday on his dark stream, especially. I mean, he really laid out my case, and it was before I sent the article over to him. So he wasn't sure if I was really ready.
Apologies, we appear to be suffering from technical difficulties. Please, pardon our dust. All right, sorry about that, folks. We had some minor technical difficulties, but we are back. So you were talking about Vox and him giving you a platform and all of that. So
I just wanted to just talk kind of about his just real thoughtfulness. Yesterday on his dark stream, for example, he started talking about the situation kind of as a prelude to this post, and I hadn't sent it over to him yet, and he at that point had no indication that I was actually willing to go out and be named as an actual name. And he was very cautious about not naming me. He was very cautious about not outing me. He was very considerate and just very, just thoughtful of another person. And I appreciate that. And I want to get that message out that he is like that. And a lot of people don't realize it.
Yeah, I mean, like I said earlier, Vox does have this reputation. But when you're actually dealing with the guy, to my understanding from the people that I've, heard from who've had dealings with him, he's actually not a bad guy. He's very, I wouldn't exactly say very kind because I don't know him, but from what I hear, he seems like a perfectly reasonable, decent human being who just got a really shit rap and decided to roll with it.
Yeah, and I'm sure I'm on the road to getting that very shit rep myself at this point.
So okay. So you were banned from BayCon.
That's right. And to be clear, I mean, it sounds one way. I was not banned as an attendee per se, but I've been on the speaking circuit at the con for 5 years now. I know all the programming directors very personally. We've gone out to drinks every year. I've always been one to make fun programming, that culminates in drinking games a lot of the time. It ends up the talk of the con, and a lot of people love it every year. And so to find that I was not invited this year when every other person I knew, whether they had a book or not, whether they were, prominent or not, did this year, and especially as I was coming out with my debut novel, I thought, this isn't right. And it went back to around November time, election time. I saw that the organizers of the con, just every minute of every day, were just Nazi, Nazi, Nazi. Trump supporters are Nazis. They're scrawling swastikas into cars. They're following people with hijabs home. It's like, and all of it was fake news, and we found that out very quickly, right?
Yeah, all of the quote unquote hate crimes that I've seen in the past 4 to 8 months have all been either against Trump supporters or staged hate crimes in order to garner sympathy or victim cred.
What wasn't fake news, though, was that another sort of prominent attendee of the con, it's actually a guy who runs one of the party bars almost every year, saw that I was pro-Trump and started saying things like, if I see you, I'm going to kill you because you need to die and your family needs to die if they voted for Trump.
Holy,
and I said, this is...
Holy shit,
yeah,
seriously?
Said, right. I shit you not. And I said, this is crazy. And I said, I'm going to call the police if you're doing that. He says, go ahead and call the police. Watch out. And
man.
So I informed them of this, of course, at the time. And, who
did you inform, the police or the con organizers?
The con organizers.
Okay. I
said, if it's going to be a safety issue at the con, I need to know about this. And, they blew it off, of course. And, a few days later, I'm losing my friends, getting blocked, etc. by almost everybody in the community because I'm happy. And that's the bottom line.
So basically, what went down was you weren't overbearing about it, I assume, right? I don't think that you and I were Twitter pen pals at this point.
No, we weren't. If you go back to my Twitter feed and you go back to my Facebook page, you'll see, maybe I've got a couple posts of me with a MAGA hat making a thumbs up or a Pepe little okay sign, and I was just happy. I don't post political stuff every day. I try to stay away from it for the most part, unless, if it's me and you talking like this, it's one thing. I'm happy to talk whatever. But, I don't want to just berate walls with unfun stuff. And even though, I'm happy and this is a happy moment, I think, for the country and for the world, to be frank, I don't want to inundate with people with that who are my friends at every moment of every day, just as much as I would hope they wouldn't want me inundated with, the Nazi every day. Of course, I was wrong on that.
Yeah, unfortunately. But yeah, so you weren't being overbearing about it. You weren't bringing this up in every conversation. You weren't making fun of people. You weren't threatening people. You weren't doing anything wrong. You were just expressing your satisfaction with a political turnout, which in past years has been just perfectly fine. Nobody's really had a problem with anything of that sort. But with this year, with Trump and with all of the rhetoric going around, these people found out that you were a Trump supporter, and they started, they started blocking you on Facebook and I assume other social media sites as well. And so about the banning from the convention, that seems pretty.
Yeah.
Like, did they send you a letter saying that you're not allowed or anything like that?
No.
They just...
Here's what happened is all the invites went out, and they went out to guys who were just people who hang out at the con and etc. And I'd started getting messages from several different people saying, "Hey, the invites got out. Are you on the con? Let's plan some programming." Because like I said, I've always planned fun, different programming just to kind of add a twist or something new or something entertainment based to conventions. Because the same old. Even politics aside, the same old writing talks about how to edit your novel to be an independent success. That type of stuff's boring as shit too, right?
Yeah.
So, I've always been trying to do something new and creative, whether that's with role playing or with doing a twist on reading where there's drinking involved. It's something fun. And so people come to me about this. And I said, no, I haven't been invited. Well, they said, well, we'll wait for a second because, there's been some mix-ups with the mailing list. Well, I waited for a second as I thought, and I emailed them. And I know these people. I've outside of the con gotten drinks with these people, gone to baseball games with these people.
Yeah, these are friends.
This is were
friends.
Is the appropriate. This isn't me who's just randomly coming into this group of people. They don't, who they barely know me or whatnot. I'm pretty involved. Up until the election, the lead programming director. Her and I would correspond via Facebook Messenger almost every day about things. It's been a shocking turnaround, to say the least.
And then they just cut you off completely.
They sent me out a form letter saying that, several people are not invited this year, and don't worry about it, and send in programming thoughts anyway. And I was pretty offended to get a form letter back. And this
especially
is
from people that you've gone out and gotten, like you said, you've gone and gotten drinks with these people, you've gone to baseball games with them, and they send you a fucking form letter instead of just
right,
getting on a Skype
up and
call.
Being like, look, we're having a problem, and if you want to talk to me, I'm happy to talk. I'm not going to hold grudges or whatnot. But that's just it's just garbage, frankly. So I took their advice at that point, and I started suggesting programming because that's what the form letter told me to do. Of course, when they send things like that, they do it so that they can, point to it and say, no, we didn't do anything wrong. This, and can kind of wash their hands of a person. We all know how this works when we're dealing with people like this.
Yeah, just kind of quietly shunt you off to the side instead of actually facing up and dealing with the problem.
Most people in science fiction are good with that because they are low confrontation, low energy, and and just kind of antisocial people for the most part. Let's be honest with who the crowd is, and so that works out most of the time. Now, with me, I'm the opposite. So I started suggesting programming. I went through their programming for the last 4 years, and I found all their little political panels, and I started one by one just sending them little political panels, just like the ones they ran, but with a right-wing slant instead of their crazy social justice slant.
I'm sure they absolutely loved that.
My first one, which was a play off of their Women in Science Fiction, How Women Are Transforming the Field, of course, was Making Science Fiction Great Again, Castalia House in Science Fiction, How It's Changing the Field.
Which, if they had any sense, if they had any kind of metrics or sensors to test where the landscape is right now, they would realize that Castalia House really is kind of remaking science fiction at the moment, thanks to people like Jeffro and Vox himself.
Yes.
So that would actually be a really cool con to have. Maybe get Vox and Jeffro down there for a weekend and put them on a panel.
I know Vox doesn't do public appearances, but that would be amazing. I would definitely attend that. Needless to say, I did not get a response.
Yeah, so, I can imagine.
So I waited, 3-4 days. I'm not going to inundate in spam. I'm just going to slowly do this because this is how you trigger. And I went for the next one, which was actually one I complained about at the time several years ago, which was called Combating Pseudoscience: How to Convince Your Friend Out of Being a Creationist. And I thought, well, this is anti-Christian bullshit. I told them that at the time.
I mean, I can understand where you're coming from with that, because there are different levels to creationists. Like, I grew up in, I know that beyond being a heathen atheist, this already, makes me, beyond the pale. But I grew up in a Southern Baptist household, and
oh boy,
some of the people there were, young Earth creationists, and that's obviously bullshit. But the idea of a creator is not, disproved by science or anything like that. So creationism is a perfectly reasonable philosophical or theological tenet to hold. So trying to convince people out of being a creationist is essentially saying, we're going to put you in a room and explain to you for an hour straight why your religion is bullshit.
Yes.
And that's really insulting to people.
Then meanwhile, they'll have another panel about how, Wiccan and paganism and, getting in with the spirits and all of that is healthy and wonderful. So, I mean,
little bit of a double standard there. Little bit of a double. They're trying to promote actual science, but at the same time talking about, all of this spiritualist. I would classify it as nonsense, but
and none of this has anything to do with science fiction or fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, I could understand how some of these subjects, if taken in the right way, would influence science fiction. For example, the Catherine Kimbridge Chronicles, the book series that I did some of the audiobooks for. It's specifically written from not exactly a Christian perspective. I would say it was a Christian perspective because there is a priest in the books who's a main character. And he presents a very kind of equanimous, I guess, if that's even a word, view of the faith. But it's kind of taken as read in those book series that there is a creator. And you could just as easily come to your science fiction story as there being no creator and, start
Absolutely.
from the Big Bang Theory.
But I have no problem in talking about these subjects. I mean, they're hard subjects and they're interesting, and communicating and debating about them is not a problem, especially within the context of fantasy settings or science fiction settings and how that causes them to operate. I mean, that's interesting stuff. Yeah, but this isn't what they're doing.
Yeah, coming at it from that angle is very insulting. And I mean, the vast majority, well, maybe not the vast majority, but no, I would say the vast majority, because it's only I don't know, 13% maybe who identify as no religion in America. And that's not even people who identify as atheists. They could just, not agree. They could be Christian, but they're not a formal Christian. They don't go to church or anything like that. So yeah, the vast majority of people in America alone, which is the main audience, the main crowd that all of this stuff is trying to appeal to and make money off of, are religious. So you're kind of directly alienating 85% of your audience right there.
Yeah, and they wonder why the attendance is so low here, right? So yes, I saw that panel, and then my suggestion is, of course, combating pseudoscience. How to convince your friend out of being a global warming alarmist. So,
I'm sure that went over swimmingly.
I don't know. I got no response again. So I realized I needed to up the ante if I was going to draw them out. I mean, they are. I know these people. These people unfriended me because of my Trump vote, because of my excitement about Trump. Mm-hmm. They hate me over it. They loathe me over it. They think I'm a Nazi. So I need to draw them out because they're lying. They're doubling down by being quiet about it, and they're just hoping I'll go away. So my final panel, because my third one trumps them all. I'm going to give a shout out here to the hashtag #SadPukas and the alt furry for inspiring me on this one.
Good old QQ and Dan Wolfgang out there.
They are my freaking Twitter heroes, I got to tell you. I saw an article they linked the other day about the truth of Nazi furries, and I went
yeah,
and
that shit was hilarious.
I went in and I saw that, and I looked, and a couple years ago they did a whole convention of women in science fiction, celebrating women of wonder, of course, because it's not like the entire publishing field isn't women, and if you submit a story, that doesn't have a female protagonist, it's not like, 80 times more likely to get rejected.
Yeah.
But they still like to pretend that there's this like inequality going on. It's kind of crazy. So I took their concept of women in diversity, which was one of their panels. And of course, I changed it to furries in diversity. Why science fiction conventions should be a safe space for Nazi furries. And I linked the article and I said, look, these guys' plight is real and they need somewhere to go. And we should be...
I'm sorry. This is just so fucking funny to me.
So guess what? I got a response.
That was the one that did it. That was the one that did it. The alt furry post was the one that did it.
So cheers to the alt furry. I would not be a top 1,000 Amazon author, be number 12 in space opera without the alt furry. I owe them everything.
You hear that, guys? You're doing good fucking work out there.
So I do have a friend who is still a friend on the programming committee. Doesn't have any power, kind of doesn't have anything, and I probably shouldn't talk about it too much in case the powers that are listening and try to slap somebody for association with me at this point.
Oh, we can keep them as anonymous as possible.
But I heard basically that they don't want my emails anymore. They don't want any association with me anymore, and that
I can't imagine why.
If you're not going to engage with me rationally, I'm going to engage with you on a funny level because that's fun to me, for one. And two, if you can't handle that sort of thing and you're in the entertainment business, you're not entertaining very well. And all of my panels are freaking hilarious. Can you imagine the attendance that would show up for these?
They would probably make a shit ton of money off the alt furry one. Just for people to show up and see what the fuck is going on.
Dragoncon has a long-standing panel that went back from the Anne McCaffrey days, and Anne McCaffrey had her own track at Dragoncon. I mean, she was freaking huge, right? Mm-hmm. And so she had her own track at Dragoncon for years and years before they condensed it all to the literary track, as our genre has been dying. But what's always been huge, and it's always packed the house to where they've had to get bigger rooms year after year after year, was a panel called Dragon Sex. And she would go in there, and people would just ask her questions on how dragons do it.
Are you serious?
I am. It sounds like a joke out of Mallrats where that guy's going around going, how does Superman with his super sperm do his thing,
He blow a load like a shotgun right out of her back.
But it's true, and hundreds of people would show up to this, and it would be hilarious year after year. It never got old.
I have to look up videos of that. If I can find any, I'll put them in the show notes or the description.
So, in that tradition, if you do stupid things like that, it can end up fun. And you just need to engage with people who are fun, who are creative. And you need to just, frankly, put stupid Facebook posts aside and just man up and deal with it. That's my analysis out of it.
Yeah, I saw this video on Twitter. Might have been yesterday, maybe the day before, but this young lady went up to the He Will Not Divide Us live stream that miraculously has not been shut down despite it being completely polified. And she basically explained that if the people who are putting on this "He Will Not Divide Us" thing want to, want to actually affect change in the world, then they need to step up their game, and they need to get fun. They need to get fun, and they need to get funny with it, because the kids. She even said, when I come here and I see the two groups of people just kind of standing at odds with each other, I want to go stand with the kids in the MAGA hats, because they're actually having fun. They're making this fun, and there's jokes, and nobody's really taking it too seriously. And it seems like these people at Baycon are trying to make this very serious and
very serious literary science fiction. Yeah, last year, here's my panel that was the most success last year. And this is totally off topic to probably what we wanted to talk, but this was frickin' the best. I found the original 50 Shades of Grey manuscript, and if you guys don't know about this,
it was Twilight fan fiction.
Twilight fan fiction, and just straight Twilight porn. And it is the most awfully written piece of garbage I've ever seen in my entire life. Her pen name was something stupid like Ice Queen Snow Dragon, or Snow Queen Ice Dragon, or something ridiculous.
It can't be as bad as My Immortal. It can't be as bad as My Immortal.
So I found this and I said, well, you know what? I'm gonna have a secret panel, guys, and you're just gonna trust me on this. And they did.
And that was their first mistake, right?
It was great. So I got a couple awesome voice actors to come in who were attending the con anyway, and to be on the panel. And with the help of the organizer, who's my friend here, I got to give the credit. And we assembled a group of people that was just charismatic, fun, drunk as shit, and hilarious. And I just pulled out some sections of that manuscript, and we did a live reading like we were actors for a film. And it was shocking. It was horrifying. It was terrible, terrible written content. And there were points where people couldn't even get through sentences because they were so poorly constructed.
Oh, man,
but
I wish
hilarious.
I had been there. I wish I'd been there. That would have been right up my fucking alley.
The room. People were talking about it for days. And that's the sort of thing I like to do, and that's why I'm fun and mischievous and all that. That's getting me attention. But yeah, from that point, after my making it known that I'm a friend of the alt furry, I was let know that I am not welcome. And there's your exclusive on the details of this.
Okay, cool. It's not exactly exclusive, but it's straight from the horse's mouth. You know what I mean? Like that's part of the reason that I wanted to get you to come on my podcast, because I know that like people like who have huge audiences like Joe Rogan is not going to care about this.
No.
And he's not about to have you on to talk about how fucked up science fiction and fantasy is. And none of the other podcasts out there that do kind of what we're engaged in will touch this subject at all, because they're all terrified of risking their reputations. Meanwhile, I don't have a fucking reputation, so I'm free to do whatever I want. So you can, I wanted to give you a place to come out here and speak your piece and say whatever you felt comfortable with, and basically get the story out there. And I'm thinking that I'm going to release this just this week, just like Friday or something like that, just to kind of partially to hop on the buzz bandwagon, but mostly to just get this story out there while it's still relevant before people forget about it. Because if we leave this until, the weekend, or we leave it until next weekend, that's like a billion years in internet time. So,
I don't even remember anything that happened last week personally. So.
Yeah, I'm the same way, but I do drink a lot. So,
so yeah, I mean, of course, there's a sob story involved with all of it. I mean, when I was writing my post for Vox this morning, I was like, what do you want me to say? And he said, well, don't go into the details of the SJWs attacking you, because nobody wants to hear that. And he's right. It's not fun. Everybody's got people calling them Nazis on Facebook. Probably every single person listening right now has that going on. And I'm sure you've been called worse than that on occasion.
On occasion, but for some reason I seem to just like the hate mail just doesn't come. I don't know why. I find it fucking hilarious. I wish I would get more hate mail, but I seem to just be mostly ignored. I'm a complete untouchable except for you guys.
Maybe they're scared of you. We'll go with that.
Yeah, just get me a little ego boost there.
but I mean, I could go and tell stories about that, but nobody wants to hear that. He's right, and I don't want to sit around and be a complainer. I mean, that is what we are kind of make fun of the opposite side for doing, is that they just sit around and complain. They write whole blogs just complaining about how hard it is and how tough it is, and we all know that. We all have it just as hard and just as tough. Independent authors especially have it the hardest and the toughest. And if you're a man, it's even harder. And if you're a conservative, it's just a non-starter. So unless you have a platform already, or unless you really fit within their demographic molds, you're stuck. I'm out of that rut now, as of today, at least for this week, until everybody forgets.
Well, it's honestly, it's very brave of you to come out here and, make this public and put your name on it and not just release this as an anonymous story about, a friend of mine was disinvited from a con and then leave.
I thought about it.
leave the internet to kind of put the pieces together, and then it eventually comes out that this was you. But no, you came right out of the gate, like after you kind of figured out that this was going on with you. You kind of came out of the gate and like you changed your Twitter name and started releasing all these blog posts, and now you've got like I saw a piece before we started this conversation where Declan Finn had quoted you, and you've like Brian Niemeyer has written a post about this, and like you say, you've been on Vox Populi, and I'm almost certain that Castalia House has a post on this as well, which, by the way, Castalia House needs to get a way to subscribe to their blog posts.
Yes, I agree with that. And Jeffro, you need to just get in contact with me and talk to me and hang out with me, because I got a man crush on you, Jeffro. I really do.
I think just about everybody in the in the pulp revolution scene has a man crush on Jeffro.
Oh man, yeah. I mean, the outcry of support is really the story about this. This is the most important story that people will see. I mean, we had the sad puppies, and we watched Brad Torgerson get just torched, and we watched Larry Correia just get torched, and Sarah Hoyt just get torched. Mm-hmm. And then Vox came in and he said, screw it, we're gonna burn the ships, right? And he of course he's always getting torched. So we noticed that. We had forerunners who had a support network of like 10 people, and that's it. And then they came out, and because of what they did, and whether they failed with their Hugo missions or succeeded or whatnot, it's almost irrelevant now that the dragons exist, right? But what they did is they paved the way to where people can openly talk about who they are and about what they actually believe in, and come out like I did and have 1,000 people reach out to you and support. I mean, I have had about that today. It's crazy. Big name authors who I don't know or barely know, like Nick Cole, writing blogs about me and giving me more exposure.
I did see that link on Nick Cole's blog to your post.
I know Nick Cole less than I know Vox Day. It's really heartening to see these people care, and it exists. And like I said at the end of my blog with Vox, for every time you are brave enough to come out, and every time you're brave enough to tell it like it is, and tell how the SJWs wronged you, and pose a solution, to be frank, it makes it easier for the next dozen people to do it. And I owe those forerunners before me, and I'm here for support for anybody else who wants to come out and do this. I got your back. I've got a much smaller platform than they do, but know that you guys have a friend.
Yeah, I would like to extend my offer to that. I probably have less reach than you do, but I would also throw my lot in with that group of people, because it's like Milo says in his speeches. One of the reasons that he does what he does, and whatever you think of Milo, this is true. One of the reasons that he does what he does is when you come out there and you buck the rules in the fashion that you or Vox or Milo or, insert random person X who's actually done it here has done, there really aren't any consequences, and you've actually had gains for coming out and saying
Big
this.
time.
Like you said, this massive outpouring of support. The audience is there, the support network is there, the fans are there, and they're just as tired of this shit as you and I are.
Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And we're mobilized now. I think we have a movement, and we've won politics. Politics is already over. That's the silly part where you got to sit back and laugh about this. As much as somebody wants to try to silence me or wants to try to get rid of me because they literally can't even, they've lost. It's happening, and them doing that to me doesn't change that fact. It doesn't do anything except for, lose them a friend, really, because I'm gaining 10 every time.
I would say that the battle there in that particular field needs to continue, because there's no end of just like Mark Levin keeps talking about the way that the Democrats would do it was they would get into office, and then they would stack the judicial branch with their people, activists, judges, and whatnot. So it's still a fight there, but with Trump as president, with the people that he's picking for his cabinet, it's very heartening to see somebody come out here and not only buck the system and do what he said he was going to do during the campaign, but put people in whose purpose, whose mission, stated goals are to shrink the size of government.
Absolutely. And that's why we're all so excited. I mean, everybody goes, why would you have this Secretary of Education who isn't involved in public education? Well, it's like, the whole point is that she's not involved in public education is a disaster, and it's huge and it's bloated. And I mean, just locally, I've got a this is 10-year-old information. I'm sure it's even worse now. But when I was in junior college out locally here, they had 5 administrators who were making over $150K a year, who all they did was deal with the student union and vote on student union matters. Like, why do you need 5 people with that kind of salary to do that?
Yeah,
you don't.
That's insane.
And if that's going on at every school across the country, and then you get these agencies all the way up the board, I mean, yeah, you need somebody to go in there and just, cut 20, 30% of it and not be a person who's inclined to expand it or care about the bureaucracy. That's exactly what we're getting.
We need people who are going to go in there and clean house.
And that's the whole point. And we said that's what was going to happen. I mean, what did they think was going to happen, to be honest, right?
I honestly don't think that they had a contingency plan.
There was none. No.
When Hillary lost, they were all so sure that was going to happen, and then when it didn't happen, it immediately devolved from we have to peacefully resist and defend our democracy and all of that stuff to let's riot in the streets and just light shit on fire.
Yeah, and I live close to Berkeley. I wanted to go to that event.
My wife told me, that you didn't.
She told me no. She said, look, you have 2 little kids. You're a father to little kids. You can't go out there. And as much as I begged her and as much as I really wanted to, and then later on I was saying, you know what, I'll just go and I'll go on Periscope and just camera phone the violence. A lot of people I knew got really hurt there. And UC Berkeley went out there and said there were no reports of any injuries. Complete lie to try to cover it up.
Yeah, I mean, Stefan Molyneux has actually interviewed on his channel, freedomainradio.com, 2 of the girls, like the girl in the Make Bitcoin Great Again hat that got maced in the face. He's interviewed her. He's interviewed one of her friends whose husband was actually beaten unconscious in the street.
Yeah, Miss S. Misanthrope, my friend on Gab, shout out.
Yeah. Which, by the way, if you guys aren't on Gab, get on Gab. What are you people doing with your lives?
It's so important. The one thing about Gab, I would say, is that it really needs to develop more of a cultural platform. I want to see more people talking about books and science fiction and, science fiction TV shows and fun things that we all care about, and not just have the relentless echo chamber of the opposite over there, because, it gets tiring after a while. And I know some people have left the site mainly because all they see is that day after day, just like the SJWs. We don't want to fall into the same traps,
Yeah, it's just a straight Trump love fest over there. But more importantly, and this is the point that I was trying to make in my autistic screeching the podcast, was as Andrew Breitbart has said and has been quoted numerous times, politics is downstream from culture. And part of the way that the SJWs have been able to affect politics and cultural consciousness as much as they have is because they have controlled the culture since the 60s. Maybe even before that.
Very true. I actually, my background, I don't really go into a lot of it because I try to stay, hey, I'm science fiction. Science fiction is my thing. But I actually ran for Congress in 2010. And
really?
my district out here, actually, it got redistricted since then. But at the time, it was a 50-50 Democrat-Republican split here because it went out to kind of the farm areas. So it was very close. And there was an incumbent Democrat who, just wasn't anybody popular that anybody cared about. I think he's still in Congress, but nobody knows his name. He really hasn't done much, right? And so I tried to run against him, and I was the leading Republican in the field for several months. I kind of had the backing of Ron Paul's organization because I was in a little bit with them at the time, and I got to meet Andrew Breitbart. And I got to one of my buddies who ran for Senate out here introduced me, and we got beers one night. And that man was the most charismatic, wonderful man I've ever met, and he was so passionate about this culture cause. He was really focused on big Hollywood at the time, and big Hollywood is the thing that he wanted to draw attention to. And he's right, Hollywood is a cesspool and disgusting. It really is. I really would like more alternatives to that, and we need to work towards that because producing films and music and that kind of entertainment is really expensive and really time consuming and requires a lot of coordination. That's why books is a little bit easier. But it was heartening to hear what he was saying. He was saying just do it, just be in the field, and anybody listen to this, be in the field and stay in the field and just keep being in the field because you and your ideas will translate to the next generation. And it is a generations long struggle. It really is on the cultural level.
Yeah. And once again, the cultural, getting things done on the cultural level will inspire the political level as well. Because, like I said in that podcast episode, John Carter of Mars, Edgar Rice Burroughs' John Carter series, inspired people to go to the moon.
Yeah.
If we get in front of this cultural shift that is happening, and I'm not exactly making a case for introducing right-wing politics into science fiction and everything. Now, if you want to do that, that's perfectly fine. Go ahead. I'm not here to police your artwork. But just shifting the cultural narrative away from where it has been the past 20, 30, 40 years is massively important. Like that's why the drum that I've been beating on is make science fiction and fantasy and horror fun again. Because if you make it fun, if you give people the option to express themselves, whatever expression that might be, if you want to write your strong, independent woman science fiction novel, fine, go for it. I'm more than happy for you. If you want to write a conservative think piece dressed up as science fiction, like Starship Troopers is, basically, go for it. Have fun. But we need more voices out there in the cultural zeitgeist from different perspectives. And the way that publishing has been going for the past few decades has been choking these different perspectives off, so all that you are fed is this one-party line. And it has been killing this genre. It has been driving people away. It has been making people less interested.
And what you find in that vein is, as you're talking about, you got to be careful as a writer because you are trying to entertain an audience. And when the message outweighs the fun, it makes it really hard to read. And everything these last 20 years, it's been message with like a little bit of plot pasted on, with a little bit of this pasted on, and not much else. So you got to be careful about that. I mean, if you look at stuff like Arthur C. Clarke. Arthur C. Clarke just went into his little science journals, extrapolated technology, and then pasted a book on it. I mean, it's great to do that, but you're not really motivating people's minds towards anything at that point. You're not convincing them that this technology is something they should pursue, because there's nothing of a dream there. And you need to create the dream. The job of us as writers is to create the dream.
Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself. Because if the dream is there, if you put that I mean, like, even I've just started listening to A Princess of Mars, the audiobook. And the way that John Carter gets to Mars is basically he died and then he wished really, really, really hard, and he got to Mars.
Isn't that great?
But the simple fact that he was on Mars and that Edgar Rice Burroughs was creating this insane world of these aliens and these almost mythological beings on this distant planet gave people who were reading those books at the time the inspiration to go to college and become, astrophysicists and engineers, and actually become astronauts and go to space and see what's out there. Because it might be we just find, rocks and maybe a couple of microbes, but we might discover an entire new civilization out there that's beyond the wildest dreams of science fiction authors.
That's right. And we're our society's dulled down to what our thoughts are. Everything's identity now. Everything's about your skin color or something completely shallow and stupid. Don't talk bad about fat people. I mean, I'm fat, but
yeah, same here. I'm overweight myself. I don't mind all of the fat shaming and shit.
It's fine. It's healthier for me to be fat shamed, to be honest.
Yeah, because I'm about to start an exercise regimen because of all of the fat shaming.
But nobody's really trying to figure out, where are we going to go, and what are we going to do 3, 4, 5 millennia from now, 500 millennia from now, and what's it going to look like, and what is the limits of our imagination to that? And I'm trying to push that more with my writing now. I kept a little bit of realism before, just because that's what I grew up with, and that's how I started to write. But I'm really looking forward to, in the coming years, pushing those boundaries and trying to see what the limits of my mind can come up with, and where I can go with it, because it's just so much fun.
Yeah, and I mean, truth is always stranger than fiction. And as when the ALS Ice Bucket Challenge was going on last year, A Dose of Buckley released a video talking about how fucking stupid it was. And then Dark Matter, I think 2525, just look up Dark Matter on YouTube and you'll find the guy. But he released a video talking about this is kind of stupid that these people are just posting videos of themselves getting, dunked with ice water on the internet. But, all of the money that they're raising is going to fund research that is opening up entire new areas of human biology that we didn't know existed before.
It was fun, and so it got people thinking. It's like there's a common theme to what really impacts culture. Whining and complaining and calling people Nazis and saying punch a Nazi is not fun. It's icky, so it's not going to influence culture. I mean,
it's moreover, it's going to stifle culture.
Right. If there's anything that we could take out of these lessons and out of how I've kind of been ostracized here, it's that. Let's bring it back to fun. That's what I'm all about.
Yeah, definitely, because I am so insanely tired of the that's why I kind of went crazy when I found out about like Fritz Leiber and Appendix N and the Pulp Revolution and all of that stuff, because I had been getting drip fed this dross through the podcast that I was listening to, and it was slow acting poison. I was so tired of hearing stories like the worst one is Wilson's Singularity, which was communist propaganda dressed up as a sci-fi story about an AI that took over the world. Well, like basically these two gay guys designed an AI and it took over the world and ushered in the communist utopia. And it was such obvious propaganda and so boring of a story that I couldn't even finish listening to it. And then I discovered all of this stuff, and my mind has been completely fired off. I've got ideas for stories again. I'm writing my own stuff. We're in a month or so, we're planning on, me and my colleagues at dimensionbucket.com, we're gonna publish a bunch of stuff. We're gonna do an anthology of original stories.
Fantastic. I'll definitely support that.
I appreciate that. But that's really the problem here, is that this fiction that has been coming out for the past God only knows how long has just not been inspiring. It has not been, the prime thing is fun. And I really do see a lot of parallels to Gamergate with the whole, like, I actually saw someone in Gamergate, this was kind of famous in that circle. One of the journalists actually came out and said that fun is a neurological trick to make you think that bad stuff is actually good.
I'm not so sure about that, and I think Appendix N proves that wrong, because if you go back to the cultural roots of what were in those stories and how they could actually make really fun and interesting concepts and have a nice paced story that is just like off the wall and zany and makes you laugh, makes you cry, and makes you excited. They did it without a lot of violence. They did it without a lot of sex. They did it without swearing. They did it without any of the degeneracy you see on every HBO program that makes it so that there's nothing else and no characters for you to root for.
Let's go ahead and name it. It's Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
Let's go ahead and call George R.R. Martin out on his bullshit. It's Game of fucking
finish those
Thrones.
Books. I literally couldn't finish those books, and I tried to watch the TV series, and the South Park episode where they just went off on the wieners is about all I think of the show, for real.
That was a very good South Park episode.
So you don't need that to have fun, and I don't think that's actually fun. I mean, I don't even see the fans of that show once it goes off the air. I don't see people rewatching that over and over and over again like they did the 1960s Star Trek. That in 20 years, nobody's going to remember that show. It's not memorable. I mean, yes, it's popular now, but there's nothing to connect with.
Yeah, and I mean, like, Martin didn't exactly revolutionize the fantasy field when he wrote his novels. I speak in the past tense because it's obvious that he really just doesn't give a fuck about the series and does not plan on finishing it before he dies. Probably of a coronary embolism, given his weight problems. But yeah, no, I can understand where you come from. I could see that being like a cult hit in 20 years or so, but not a cult hit in the way that something like Rocky Horror Picture Show is a cult hit now.
Or
just something where there's there's 20 people talking on a blog.
I know we're kind of hating on Joss Whedon now because he's a complete a-hole on Twitter. But the way Firefly is, there are characters to root for. It's not just dark for the sake of dark.
I love Joss Whedon's work. I can't stand him as a person, but I love his shows.
Right.
I actually have a story that's like, I don't know, something like 90,000 words. That's basically just a love letter to Firefly. It's just a sci-fi story about these pirates, not exactly pirates, but mercenaries in space. And, they don't exactly follow the archetypes from the show, but there's a couple of obvious shout outs in there. Maybe I'll publish that one day, but yeah, no, Joss Whedon's work is amazing. It's just like I look at his TV shows, like I haven't watched Buffy, but from what I know of Buffy and then Firefly and like the Avengers movies, and I'm like, how did this guy come up with that?
Yeah, it's kind of crazy, but it does go to show you, just to illustrate the point, that if you don't just beat your message on top of the story, don't beat it, focus on plot, focus on character, focus on fun. I mean, he gets his messages through there. I mean, there's still hyper left-wing messages in all of the works that you just listed.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But when I watch them, they don't bother me. I'm okay with it, and
because they don't supplant the story.
I'm not trying to shut somebody up and not let them think what they think, but I want that too on my side.
Yeah, that would be kind of nice. I mean, I honestly, it's kind of like the publication of what was it, Dangerous Thoughts?
Yes.
Or Forbidden
Thoughts. Forbidden Thoughts.
Which I mean, like, I really hope I'm not mispronouncing your name, dude. But Raul Nyanzi, I'm
Mm-hmm.
probably mispronouncing that horribly. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name, dude. But he released a pretty excoriating review of that, which was basically his point was, you know, this is message fiction for the right wing. It's exactly what we've seen from the SJWs, just from the right's perspective. And I read that review and I was just like, I don't know if I want to spend money on this. You know, I
To
don't.
some extent, he's right. I bought it. I mean, I like all the authors in there. I mean, all of them too. They're good people, and it definitely was message fiction. Every story, even the you know, kind of heavy hitters that really go into some of the more pulpy revolution stuff, like Brian Niemeyer and John C. Wright, definitely had message ahead of story in there. And yeah, we are railing against that concept. And to be fair, it is less fun over time. And I probably won't go back and reread a lot of those stories, even if the authors I really love, just because of that very fact. In a year from now, will I really remember that anthology, or will I, you know, remember one of Arlen Andrews' stories out of Analog that was just a fun, crazy romp last year, midsummer? I think I'll remember Arlen's story a lot more, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree with that. I think the difference is that we're not allowed message fiction. It actually is forbidden thoughts, and it's been so long since you've seen anything like that. That's why there was a reaction in the public to buy so much of it. It's like, you know what, we need to send a message. We need to send a message as the reading public, and I think that message was loud and clear. So yes,
That's a fair point.
I think we should get back to. I definitely think we should get back to hashtag Pulp Revolution. Get back to fun. And I'm not, and at the same time, I think none of us are saying that there's no room for message fiction out there. It's just we don't want to be beat over the head with it every day.
Yeah, and like when you put it in that light, that was honestly a perspective that I hadn't considered before. Sorry about that. That was a perspective that I hadn't considered before, was that, you know, this actually is a forbidden thing to do, is to deliver message fiction from the right. So I don't know, you know, looking at it like that, I might go and drop my $7 on the Kindle version or whatever the cost is.
I thought it's fun, and I love the Superversive press people. I mean, they really are trying to get off the ground. They don't have the reach that Castalia House has or anything like that yet, and they are, you know, they're doing their best too, and are worth supporting.
Yeah, no, definitely. I really do wish those people all the best. I love the podcast. Keep doing what you're doing. If I could offer one bit of criticism, it's do the podcast more often, because it's really, really fun to listen to.
Really fun, definitely. And I believe there's one coming up this weekend too, or shortly thereafter at the very least.
Oh, awesome. Maybe I'll actually get to show up for the live show one day. But I mean, like, even if they're coming at it from, like, me being, you know, the godless atheist heathen that I am, even if they're coming at it from a Christian perspective, that's more fun than the schlock that's been published for the past, you know, few decades. They have a message, but they're not being overbearing. Like you said, they're not beating you over the head with it. And they're actually concentrating on writing fun stories rather than, you know, fun stories with a slant rather than a slant with a kind of story attached to it, maybe?
Absolutely. So I think we're gonna start seeing a lot more of conservative fiction, Christian fiction, and fiction that has those elements, but that doesn't put it first, like we've been talking about in 2017. I definitely will always identify as those two things. But if you're going to go in and read my books, you know, you'll see some of my thoughts on big government and big mega corporations, which are technically the same thing, and just kind of what monopolies do, whether it's in a public or private sector. That'll come through my fiction. I didn't intend for it to by any means, but you know, it annoys me, so I think about it.
Yeah, no, that comes through in every writer's fiction. It's going to be colored by their biases. Excuse me, but The difference is the difference between like the SJW fiction and what like the Superversive people are doing, or what the pulp revolution people are doing, is that that's just kind of in the world. It's flavor. It's not the meat. You know, that's the
Absolutely.
pepper. That's the pepper on top of the steak.
Absolutely. And yeah, I think 2017 is going to be a good year for fiction. I think it's going to be a good year for people like us. I really have good feelings and high hopes.
Yeah, you and me both, brother. You and me both. I cannot wait to see what's going to happen for the rest of the year. So, do you have some more time to talk? Because I'd like to talk about your book in space opera if you have the time.
Yeah, I mean, I should get going fairly shortly because I've mentioned I do have kids to take care of before, but
Fair enough.
I will take time to talk about my book because at the end of the day, anybody who's listening to this, I want you to buy it. So
I have a copy. I have a copy of your book. I have not read it yet because I've been caught up in like the Appendix N, and I've been reading Brian Niemeyer's stuff, and I've been getting into Vox Day's Selenoth books.
I'm doing the same thing. It's been unfortunately I've spent so much money these last 2 months just on different books and stuff like that. I've got no time to keep up with them all, especially while trying to write a bunch of extra books also.
Yeah, my Kindle library is starting to look like my Steam library. But okay, so what is like the basic premise of your book? To my understanding, it's based off of a game. Is it an RPG or a board game or a video game or what?
It's a card game / app. The card game is very simple. It's just you got two different types of cards. They're ships and fortresses or bases or whatever you want to call them, and they just come into play and they deal damage to your opponent. And you got to deal damage to your opponent faster than they do damage to you. And there's combos that you can effectively make that happen. So it's very light on the flavor, but it is also very military science fiction. It's got beautiful art, and you're just looking at these ships and you're going, "Wow, this is an epic space battle," right? And it's super fast paced. Okay. So because it's on your phone and you can just play over the internet, I've ended up playing it thousands of times while I'm just waiting for a meeting or waiting for something in between things, and it's just very very easy to play, and there's a lot of people who play it, and even my 8-year-old kid plays it. So I got really into it, and so with that, I started thinking about what their world felt like, because this is just what I do. I do a lot of RPG GMing also, and I have over the years. So anytime I see any sort of flavor that's science fiction or fantasy oriented, I start plot storming and making characters to fight the bad guys, of course. And I came up with a cool little concept, and I was in the gaming industry myself a little bit, working for flavor for a different card game, which was a Western card game called Doomtown Reloaded, based off of the Deadlands RPG. So I was hanging out at Gen Con and talking to people, and I started talking to the guys at the card company, and I said, "Hey, I've got this book idea." And I pitched it to them, and they said, "Well, that's great. Do you know a publisher who would do it?" And I said, "Well, yeah, of course. I've got a friend who's got small press publishing." And it came together that simple, that easy. So I pitched my idea. My idea basically ended up kind of Rogue One-y, or I should say Rogue One-y. Rogue One ended up kind of Rescue Running, since mine came out first. But it is about a concept of just going in, breaking into an enemy fortress, rescuing or liberating something. It's not the Death Star plans; it's actually a person in this case, and coming back out again to save your small little resistance. And I focus on character first. So when I build a novel, I kind of get the loose concept, and then what I do is I fill out a pretty detailed character sheet for all the main players that I think about, and then I try to think about tertiary people. Sometimes they come in later, but I try to really dial in who the characters are, what their quirks are, and that, because that for me, what grips me in a story is when the characters really feel like more than cardboard things to move a plot along.
Okay, so you were approaching this more from like a RPG, like a tabletop RPG, like a D&D style scenario, rather than just coming up with something off of the top of your head and just running with it like a kid with scissors.
Yeah, and I end up structuring. I outline very extensively too. So before I even have a first draft, I mean, I have every scene plotted out, and those change because when I end up writing it, things happen. But
They
for the
tend
most
to,
part,
yeah.
for the most part, I mean, my little outline draft is not going to vary that much from the way that my book looks. If I find a problem, definitely I'll revise my outline. Like my current book, I realized, oh crap, I have two books here, and so I shoved out half of it and I rewrote the outline to have a completely different ending, so that I could make that a little better. But yeah, it's really the story of a ex-military woman who had to end up thieving because it's really hard out in the colonies. And her little fledgling government out there in the colonies said, our head strategist has been captured, and we need a team to go and rescue this person from evil mega corporations. So she sets out to do that. She brings her little ragtag team. I pitched it originally as Star Wars meets Ocean 11, and it came out a little bit like that. It ended up, I guess, a little more romancy because of my influences from Anne McCaffrey and Lois Bujold and Elizabeth Moon growing up than those books did. But, I like throwing in those plots, and I'm not ashamed of it.
Yeah, no need to be ashamed of it, man. The world needs more romance, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of talk about how Rogue One, the main problem with it is that it's got nothing between the characters. There's no synergy there. There's no spark there, and it just ends up making them flat and unmemorable.
As opposed to something like what was the Guillermo del Toro movie? The one with the mechs and the giant monsters. I'm kicking myself because I can't remember the name of this movie. It had Charlie Day in it. Why can I not remember the name of this movie? People are screaming.
How did I not see this if it's Charlie Day and mechs and monsters? Oh my god!
It had Ron Perlman in it too.
Wow.
Hang on, I'm actually gonna have to go and
I'll talk so there's no dead air.
Pacific
you don't
Rim.
Want dead air on the radio.
Pacific Rim.
Pacific
That's the name
Rim.
of it.
Right. Yes.
Well, in that movie, there's the two main characters of the movie are a man and a woman, and they have very good synergy with each other. It's really it's a sight to see, to watch these two people interact with one another in this movie.
Yeah.
But at the end of the movie, they have the perfect setup for like the kiss scene, and they don't do it, and they just hug each other.
They just hug it out.
And that makes sense in the context of that movie because they're not really romantically involved. It makes sense when you watch the movie. But
yeah, I actually got some editorial feedback on one of my early drafts that I had a lot. I pushed the romance a lot further. And my editor said, they're in the middle of basically a battle zone here, and they just start kissing. I mean, really? And I'm like, in all the old movies they did that, and I did edit it out, and it is right from a realism perspective, and from in Rogue One, in Pacific Rim, maybe from that realism perspective, that would never happen. But you still get goosebumps when Leia kisses Luke for luck, even though it's creepy at this point.
Yeah, knowing what you know about those two characters.
But it's still, that moment is still there, and even though it's cheesy, even though it's over the top, it's fun, and it gets back to that again.
Yeah, like I say, tropes are tropes for a reason. It's because they connect with people, because people understand that on a visceral, biological level, and they gravitate towards those kind of
and more
moments.
importantly than that, I mean, if you've ever been in love before, and most of us have, you do the stupidest things in the stupidest situations at the worst timing every single time. I mean, it's every single time,
Yeah, absolutely. That would be way more realistic than just having them fight the battle and not
Yes.
not
Because
follow through
you
on
will
that.
pause to think about that. I mean, it is as stupid as it is. If your ship is about to blow up, if you're out there, you're thinking, "Oh my God, I'm never going to get to see her again." It's weird how our meat robot bodies are programmed for that sort of thing, but I think that is realistic. Personally, I'm a little sad I edited that out, but I do understand the criticism of that.
Yeah, I mean, but that's a real thing, you know. So maybe in the next story, you can bring that back, you know.
Absolutely, I intend to.
Not that I would tell you how to do your work, but
so I posted up on my blog today, delarose.com, which for those who can't spell that because it's obscenely hard to spell, is DELARROZ.com. It's Del Arroz of the rice, arroz con pollo. It is, yeah, you know, it's that. So
all kinds of history attached to the name.
Yeah, I could go off on that for hours, but I won't bore anybody with it. But I've got my next things coming up. I've finished a novella, which is really dealing with bringing baseball to the moon, and I really thought about that.
Sounds fun. I'm not even a baseball fan, but that sounds fun.
I took a weird stance on it too because I've just been watching. I'm a big baseball fan, and so I follow everything. I follow all the GMs and the team meetings and all the things like that. And I took it from the perspective of a commissioner of baseball, looking at a failing entertainment industry, because the way entertainment works is, you grow or die, right? And that's what we're dealing with in science fiction. It's what we're dealing with in everything. And baseball, in America really has hit this point where it is maximum market capacity. It's not going to go any further, and it is kind of on a decline, unfortunately. But it isn't worldwide. Worldwide, it's going crazy. And so eventually, in my thought, that the world will form a league as we grow and expand, and eventually that market cap will be reached. Well, what do you do at that point? How do you make it fresh again, and how do you make it great again? The only option is to expand into outer space and to expand into different colonies. But you've got a little problem with gravity when you got ball games at that point. So look for that soon. I'm going to put that out. I might do a series of novellas.
Is this going to be published independently? Given what you like, I don't know how far I can go with saying about what you're.
I'm definitely I'm pretty open about everything right now. I'm definitely planning on publishing that independently. I don't see a market for novellas. I think to authors, if you got a novella or a short story, short story is not as much, but you're not going to move the needle if you just get a short story in an anthology. And if you get a novella in an anthology, yes, it's nice. Yes, it is an accolade. Yes, you can clap that somebody bought your work and all that. It's really. I would love to have this story in FNSF magazine or whatnot. But people go and read those magazines, and they buy their magazines, and they only buy those magazines for their favorite author that's in those magazines. And they will read their story for the most part. And there might be a few people who check it out, but you're not going to gain much from doing that. So I would rather release a novella by myself and at least have the few hundred people I'm going to guess who are going to be interested in baseball in space read me for me and remember me. So if there's any advice I can give on that front, I think just putting yourself out there as you is probably a better way to do it. I mean, it could be wrong. There's different ways to do things, and nothing's the same for everybody. That's right. But that's some advice I'd give at this juncture. I definitely don't want to deal with gatekeepers again, as you've been suggesting.
Yeah, definitely not.
So I'm intending on putting that out. I've got my second novel had a kind of similar plot to my Star Realms one. It's steampunk, a little more YA. So I'm going to try to push that out as quickly as possible too. Now on the baseball and space novella, you might have seen earlier today that I reached out to John Scalzi for a blurb or a whatever column.
I did see that, and I was laughing that like that happened right when I was getting in my car at work, and I gotta let the engine warm up, so I just pop open Twitter and dick around for like 2 or 3 minutes, and I just saw that, and I was like, "What in the fuck?" You're trying to turn John Scalzi into a fucking untouchable in his own industry. That's just god tier trolling. Congratulations.
And so I looked at it. Thank you. I looked at it, and he sent me his requirements, and he will not touch self-published works, of course, because if there's no gatekeeper attached, it's not worthy of the time of John Scalzi.
Fucking coward, man. I
am toying with taking it to a small press publisher to try to see if I can squeak in with getting a blog on John Scalzi's site.
Get in touch with Vox and see if you can go through Castalia House and see how Scalzi reacts to that.
Because if I can manage that at this juncture, that's almost worth 50% of gross revenue, which is what it would take to do that, to do it for me. I'm not certain I actually want to do that for real, but gosh, that's an excellent troll. It really is.
Yeah, that was fucking incredible. I was dying laughing when I saw that shit.
So yeah, I want to release that novella. I want to release the steampunk YA. I'm going to try to do that as quickly as possible for those of you who have just discovered me, just so you guys have more content, because I know how this game works. I've got my own space opera universe, and I've got a sub-series of that, which is a little more Heinlein style science fiction, which I'm very proud of what I've written so far. I'm going to submit that probably to real publishers later on this year, because that's something I think with the right marketing can go a little further.
I'd be careful with the real publishers. I mean,
you know what I mean by real publishers at this point.
If you ever need audiobooks done of your stuff, I mean, I know that you went through a publisher with the last one, so you might not retain the audio rights to that.
I don't.
With your future work, if you do retain the audio rights, if you go to dimensionbucket.com and get in touch with us, we would be more than happy to help you out with that. We do have a huge workload, but we will put public domain projects on hold so that we can work with people who are actually trying to get their stuff out there.
I guarantee I will be contacting you about that soon.
And you'll get music and the whole deal.
Beautiful. So. Thanks, Jim.
Yeah, no problem, man, whatsoever. This is what I'm here for. I've made my decision that I'm going to do this indie thing and be the audiobook guy as far as I'm able for the indie publishers and the people who have been snubbed by the big five or are just trying to get their stuff out there, and it's going to cost, but I'm willing to do it. Whereas you go to Skyboat Media and something like that, and they wouldn't touch you with a 10-foot fucking pole.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, we're more than willing to help out with that kind of stuff.
Excellent. Thanks for chatting. I appreciate it. My wife's calling me on the other line too. So
just right quick. Tell everybody where they can find you.
Oh yes, Delarose.com, as said before, which is DELARROZ.com. I am TBR_Otomo on Twitter, which is I'll have to tell that story another time. But I go by Otomo on everything else. If you just look up OTOMO, Otomo, on Gab, it's much easier to find me there. John Delarose, and my book is Star Realms Rescue Run. It is cooking along right now, so if you want to keep its little sales train going and make some splash in the publishing world on my behalf, I would be honored if you would do that. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much for stopping by and having the conversation tonight. It was an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we'll be able to do this again sometime.
Absolutely. Thanks for talking, Jim.
Yeah, no problem. Have a good night, man.
You too.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. Please follow John on his Twitter and Gab. And if you have the cash to spare, you can find his novel on Amazon, linked in the show notes or in the description of the video. If you want to support what I'm doing here, there are a couple of ways you can do that. Firstly, I have narrated books 6, 7, and 8 in the Catherine Kimbridge Chronicles series, which you can find on Audible. Those books do pay royalties, so every purchase does help me out, and they're a damn fun sci-fi romp besides. I also have some collections of old narrations from my YouTube channel on my Bandcamp, as well as never-released narrations. They're all reasonably priced, so if that sounds like something you'd be interested in, then head on over there and pick those up. There's also Aaron Clary at captaincapitalism.blogspot.com. He runs a consulting business at assholeconsulting.com, and I've also narrated 2 of his books, Enjoy the Decline and Reconnaissance Man, which you can find on Audible. Finally, if you've got something you want read into a microphone, anything from a funny internet post to your novel that you want turned into an audiobook, I am available for commissions at JimFear138.blogspot.com. Whatever you want read, I'll read it for you, unless it's erotica. I do have some standards, even if they're not very high. That about wraps it up for the sponsors, so thank you again for listening. Follow John and buy his novel, and I'll see you all very soon.